So we've got some amazing news about Anthem's post-launch roadmap that Bioware just announced over on Twitter, with some of the stuff we can expect very soon after release, including of course new strongholds on top of the ones we already knew of, new leaderboards, a new guild system, the cataclysms, and so much more. There's also a lot of talk right now over on Twitter about some of the features in the game, a few more clarifications, so I'm super excited to bring you all of that. Of course, if you enjoyed this video, a thumbs up would be super appreciated, but let's get to it. Now, one of the first things that was posted over on Twitter was this gameplay calendar. The ongoing narrative of Anthem begins. It looks quite interesting and it shows basically what Bioware is aiming to release soon after launch, and as you can see, the first update or the first act, called Echoes of Reality, is planned to come out as soon as March 2019, so not too long after the release day. That is actually quite close, less than a month, and there's a couple more planned as well. We don't really know how far into the future they are, but they should be on similar time schedules, like every few months we should have these types of updates being brought up in the game, so it all looks pretty sweet. This should calm down some of the people who had doubts about Bioware not having something to do after launch. I mean, there's definitely a lot of content being planned, and as you can see, this is part of it. But in terms of the Act 1, Echoes of Reality, which seems to be launching sometimes in March 2019, this contains several updates, actually 3 of them in total. One of them is called Evolving World, the second one is called Stronger Together, and finally the Cataclysm. And speaking of the Cataclysm, that one has been officially confirmed in the most recent gameplay trailer that has been released like a few hours ago. I also made a video on that if you want to go ahead and check out the full breakdown, but in the meantime I'm also going to go over what you can expect from these updates, and you can see right there on the bottom of this screenshot what there is to be expected from these updates. We of course have new events, we have quality of life changes, new rewards, an expanded progression system, new strongholds, guilds and leaderboards, new missions, and of course the Cataclysm itself, which is most probably going to be towards the end of this update cycle, so in update 3, and this is also when presumably the Cataclysms will be brought up in the game. Until then, it's going to be relatively peaceful in the world of Anthem. But going over these features, the new events, this is something that people have wanted for a long time. They have found that even in the demo there were not enough of them. Personally, I think for a demo it was plenty enough, and having more on that is just amazing news altogether. Quality of life changes, we have complained about this for quite some time, and Anthem could use a few quality of life changes. I'm specifically talking about the introduction of a text chat, and I'm not really sure why that is missing from the game. I know there's some law going on and some issues with the FCC, but I'm seeing other games being released after Anthem and having a text chat, and they have no problem with that, so I'm really raising the questions why that is not the case in Anthem as well. I would also love to see an easier Javelin selection screen, maybe even having all 4 of them, or the ones you unlocked, all displayed at the same time on the bay itself, not just one of them. Also, some of the loading screens get a little bit annoying, maybe there are a little bit too many of them, but the expanded progression system sounds very interesting. Not really sure what that means. I would really love to see a set of legendary items that are really hard to obtain, that you have to put in a lot of work to complete and take and craft, and have that surrounded by a certain progression system. I've seen that in Guild Wars 2, for example, and I really enjoy the concept. It guarantees you that you will get a legendary item by putting enough work, so there's no RNG involved. I would really like to see something like that in Anthem as well, not have everything just RNG based. Also, new strongholds, a big plus for the game. A lot of people have been complaining about a severe lack of strongholds. I believe that in the beginning weeks, even a couple of months, 3 strongholds is more than enough compared to what we have already in the game anyway. There's a lot of activities in there as well. Guilds and leaderboards is the most important on this list, obviously, especially guilds. As somebody who is running his own Discord server, having a guild and having people in game is so much easier, so much more accessible, sounds very good. I mean, you're going to have people to group up with, you're going to be rewarded by playing with them again and again thanks to the alliance system. Leaderboards was requested by the fans for quite quite some time, and while that is not PvP, it is a mode of people competing with one another in terms of PvE. So for example, who clears the dungeons in the fastest time, who does the highest amount of damage, who clears the boss room in the fastest amount of time, and so on and so forth. I'm really curious to see what these leaderboards are about, because they sound quite interesting, and I do like myself some competition, even if it's not directly PvP and instead competing in the same type of content. We also have new missions, but the Cataclysm is what is probably the most important here. These open world events, these dynamic open world events, and by the way, we've got some confirmation from Jonathan Warner that Shaper Storms have been encompassed by Cataclysms, a larger and more dynamic concept. So yes, my initial presumption that the Shaper Storms are now called Cataclysms and are much bigger was actually correct. So yeah, it looks quite interesting. The sneak peek that we saw in the demo itself definitely raised my interest in these types of events, so a big plus for me, and I want to see more of that, and I want to see how the middle of one of these Cataclysms looks like, because we've seen something like this in the most recent gameplay trailer number 2, so it all looks very exciting. There's also an Act 2 and 3, by the way, which for the most part now only read Cortex entry locked, so there's definitely something planned for the future months. We don't really know much about any of these acts, but if you look at some of the screenshots in the background, the Act 2 has a scar in the background. We might get to find more about the scars, we might find a little bit more about their lore, and the third one is of course Legion of Dawn related. That unless these screenshots are placeholders, but most of the time they are put in as backgrounds for a reason, and I believe these are the general themes we will see in these acts or updates, whatever you want to call them. But yeah, as I've said, the first one, Echoes of Reality, drops in March 2019. If that is not fast after launch, I'm not sure what it is. I mean, that's basically a few weeks after the game launches, and that is good enough for me. So yeah, for the most part, the game looks good to me. I'm really excited about these updates, but that is all of the info that I have for now. I hope you guys enjoyed it. As always, if you do, a like and a subscribe would be super appreciated. And last but not least, do not forget about the Anthem giveaway that is still going for like a couple more weeks, maybe even less. You can go ahead and use the links down below to participate, and I'll see you guys later.